So it is now recording. Um, and there should be, does everybody have their able to have the transcripts? I'll look to see if that's on. I'm not seeing it here. It should be automatic. What else? So if you'll please keep yourself on mute, unless sounds like we're going to be encouraged to have some dialogue in this one. And what is so you, because we're going to be in breakout rooms, do you want more, and you want more questions at the end? We're going to do a Q&A at the end, and about 10 minutes, and then I will go, let's see. We are going to have a survey at the end, so I will give the link in the chat here towards the end, and we do encourage you to fill that out for any feedback. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn the presentation to you, Rubina.
Thank you so much, Kara. And a very warm welcome to everybody here. I saw some in the welcome session, like somebody's at 6 degrees and somebody's at like very random temperatures. I'm coming from very warm New Delhi, but I hope everyone's coming here and feeling warm and welcome. So today the session is centering the margins, design justice for equity and inclusion in online learning. So as people are coming in, I think it may be a few minutes as folks come in. I'll put a link in the chat box. We're going to be using a Jamboard today. So the conversation is all through the Jamboard. You can interact with it. And also I want to invite you to please feel free to scroll through, especially if you're thinking of dropping off and going to some of the other sessions. I know that's been on my mind, that how will I do the parallel sessions. So in case this is something you want to hang on to, please feel free. But I invite you to start going through this, and I'll also just share my screen and keep us moving along on the whiteboard. Just allow me 1 second, please. So I know some folks might be wondering why Jamboard, especially since it's going to go obsolete in a few months. But this is something that's a slightly conscious design choice. So we use the Jamboard a lot in our work with folks from Asia and Africa, particularly because data connectivity is an issue. Often we need things that are light and also things that are more intuitive than, let's say, a Miro board, or even Google Slides sometimes can be tricky. This is something that we found to be the easiest to access and the easiest for people who speak other languages and may not be as tech friendly as others to be able to understand and access. So yeah, that's why the Jamboard. But I'll just move ahead, and as folks come in, I think they can keep joining us here. I invite you now to please just pick up a sticky note. If you see my screen here, if you click on the 4th button down from here, you'll see a sticky note option. And it'll pop up a little sticky note for you. You can pick your color from about 4 or 5 color options. But in that sticky note, I invite you to please write your name and pronouns if you use them, and just answering the question of what brings you to this session today. So just take maybe a minute or two, and please feel free to start popping those in. as folks are writing, it's nice to see a couple of those coming up. I'll also give a quick heads up on what to expect today. So the visual design of the presentation specifically, something where you'll find, things a little odd, some things in one corner, some things in another. It won't be the standard title on top, text on the bottom. And this is something that I want to invite you today to keep an open mind and be open to the unexpected. Often I find myself keeping my attention on the center or on the obvious spaces where I do expect to see something. But one of the reasons that design justice is so powerful as a concept is because it invites you to become aware of what's happening beyond the obvious and look for things that might get lost because they don't fit within our expected realities sometimes. So I do invite you to keep that open mind for today and keep an eye out for where things are. Thank you so much, Katie, for putting in your introduction. And folks who've just joined in, please do take a little sticky note and share your name and what brings you to the session today, and your pronouns if you choose to use them. In case the Jamboard is feeling inaccessible, please do use the chat box. You're very welcome to do that as well. Another minute or so, maybe. Welcome, Glenna, Katie, Ayan. Ayan, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. Kay, I'm glad to see you're using the Design Justice book. It's one of my favorites. So please do keep writing those. And as I'll move on to the next quick conversation for today. Oh, I already see some discussions happening on that introduction sheet. So very nice to see that. And glad to see the question about the Design Justice book. So today for this session, I want to share some group agreements from my side and see if you all agree with them, if it makes sense. I'd love for this to be an interactive session and for this to be something which we can talk about together and talk about what design justice could look like for our context. So firstly, I'd invite you to take space. So please take space, please talk, please make sure you say whatever's coming to your mind. There's no wrong answer, wrong question, silly question, nothing like that. And also inviting you to make space for others. So if you feel like you're taking a lot of space in talking, or I don't think that's happening in this group right now, so I don't think anyone needs to worry about that at the moment. But in case that does feel like something you see yourself talking a lot, please do take that step back to see if someone else wants to speak or put their point forward. So we make that space for everyone. And then just coming in with respect and for each other and grace if somebody says something or does something that isn't in alignment with our values. I know I come from a different cultural context. Sometimes I might say something that's not always welcome, but in my context, it seems okay, but sometimes it isn't in others. So please offer that grace as well. And then speaking from the I, that talking about I statements, not so many generalizations or talking about others or speaking for someone else. We invite you to talk about you and your experiences and your thoughts. And also inviting you to come into your stretch zone. So this is something that may be new for some folks. So please do take that step into trying to stretch your learning space and looking at something new and seeing how it can be um, useful possibly for you. So how does this sound to everybody? Do these agreements make sense? Are you feeling aligned with them? Does anyone disagree with anything that's up here? Or if you want to add something, please, again, sticky note, and please do add anything you think that should be there. Okay, I'm going to take silence as an agreement that this seems okay to everybody. And we can start getting into the meat of the session today. So what do we hope that you will leave with? I hope that in this session you first have a basic understanding of the design justice principles, as this may be a very new concept for some folks here. And some it may not be, like, okay, you've been reading the book already, so it's something definitely not new. But at least we feel an alignment with the basic concept of design justice and the principles. And then also what the principles could mean for your learning design process. So whatever it looks like in your context, whether you're in K-12, higher ed, adult learning, any other space, and how do we make those processes more inclusive, more equitable. And also the stretch goal for me is that perhaps we can also begin to challenge the systemic inequities that learners experience outside the learning environment by trying to imbibe these processes. So that's the hopeful objective for the day. And a quick run-in on the session flow. We'll do intros and check-in that we've already done. We're a little bit behind. I was hoping this is 5 minutes, but it's ended up being about 10. But then we'll go into talking more about design justice, the principles. I'll share a bit about how I've used it in some learnings that I have. And then we go into, as Kara had mentioned in the beginning, we'll do some group work to try and talk about what this looks like in our context and how we can apply it. And then closing for any questions or Q&A or any other conversations. There's also a bunch of resources that you all can look at and go through at your own time. Those are also there. So another quick sticky note exercise to get us going. I invite you to please write the first word that comes to your mind when you think of justice in the context of e-learning design. So what does the word justice connote for you in the work that you do? Please feel free to take a sticky note, use the chat box, unmute and share. Also very, very welcome for you to do that. Would love to hear another voice other than mine. So whatever works best for you, please. Also, as new folks are joining in, I'm just sharing a link to the Jamboard with everybody, so you can feel free to jump in and catch us on slide 6. So a couple of words coming up: access, equity, action. Great, glad to see these, and really feel like these are some of the key things that we will be talking about today. Being heard, for sure. Reform, working to fix some systems in education. Oh, I don't know where that went. Sorry to whoever was putting that note. Can you please write that again? Choice, reform, being heard, equity. yes, yes, and yes to all of these, and I'm so glad to hear these words coming up. Um, I'll start now getting a bit into what design justice is and why we want to consider it for equitable learning design. So usually the design process, or in our case, the learning design process, will take some things or some people into consideration, and often it will be people with the most power. So like the squares and the triangles that you see in this image here, that this kind of a process will not always include people or systems that are impacted by the design process, but include certain others who have more say, more power, and there's more value attached to their word in the capitalist structures that we live in. If I come to the American higher education context, from what I understand, I've not studied in higher ed in the US, and this is from what I see and hear from colleagues in this space. But maybe it's your institution heads or deans of your programs who are taking decisions about what gets taught, how gets taught, what I get to hear a lot about the pricing and the cost of higher education in the States right now. So those decisions are often not involving the people who are most impacted by this, which is the students, the learners, and who has access to that education. So sometimes that learning design process will not involve folks, but even when you do consider learner needs or they are involved, it will often probably be the majority who are English speaking or able-bodied or come from a certain race or a certain ethnic background, who have more access to these spaces and to have their voice heard. So even if I talk about Indian education spaces where I'm more familiar, we have a greater shift now towards privatized education and profit-centered education. And we also have to deal with, in our context, the caste is a huge issue. So having a certain privileged castes that have strongly held control over learning spaces here. So the design process, the learning design process will often have all of these systems at play and not necessarily include folks who are impacted by it the most, which is either learners or aspirational learners who may not have access to those spaces. So what design justice does is invites you to rethink this process and figure out ways that you can bring more folks into the design process and make sure their voices are heard. As somebody had written in the first a couple of slides ago about what justice means, it is to make your voice heard and to make sure that their inputs are valued and not just tokenistic, just putting some people there for a checklist, but really hearing and really valuing what different people are bringing to the table. So a way to do this, I know I've spoken about design and justice and these words quite a bit, but how do we actually make it happen? So something that design justice, and this is from Sasha Costanza Chalk's work and the Design Justice Network's work. There's so many incredible people doing working on this and brought this together. So some of the things that, some of the questions that one can ask, and these are the three key questions that design justice invites you to ask. They offer a great starting point. They're obviously not covering everything that you could possibly be thinking about and working towards inclusive learning design. But these three questions do offer a great starting point in building justice into one's learning design process. So asking yourself who participated in the process, who was harmed by the process, and who benefited from the process. So these are three great questions to think about, and we'll go more deeper into this in the coming slides. And I see Kelly in the chat. Thank you for sharing what you'd written, and we missed that sticky note. And I think after this session, in case you haven't already, pop that back in there. But for Kelly, when the question was about justice in learning design, it can mean working to redesign or reimagine educational spaces that have not always had equitable access by all learners, and exactly what we're trying to address today. So thank you so much for putting it so beautifully. So now talking about what is design justice and going a bit more deeper into the concept. So design justice explores the relationship between design, power, and social justice. It's an approach to design that has been led by marginalized communities and continues to be led by marginalized communities. And it aims to explicitly challenge rather than reproduce structural inequalities. It's also something that's emerged from a growing community of designers in different fields who work closely with social movements and community-based organizations around the world. In case you haven't, please do check out the Design Justice Network. There's a whole bunch of things happening, and there's a whole bunch of us from different parts of the world in different contexts and communities coming together to try and take the design justice concept forward. So design justice, simply put, rethinks the design process. It centers people who are normally marginalized by design, and uses collaborative, creative practices to address some of the deepest challenges that we face. So I now want to get into the principles of the Design Justice Network. There are 10 principles that communities had come together to build. This is a living document. So when we had done the translation of these principles to Hindustani, which is my language, we actually added an 11th to also talk about caste and how caste is a factor in design justice in the Indian context. But there are 10 for now that I've put here. I want to now stop talking. You have heard my voice for about 20 minutes, but I now want to invite somebody from the group. If you feel like volunteering to read the 5 principles on this slide and the 5 next ones, please do. You're very welcome. Please do either raise your hand or just unmute and let me know that you're okay to take this on. It'll be great to hear another voice. Anybody? Teresa, please go ahead. Thank you so much.
We use design to sustain, heal, and empower our communities, as well as to seek liberation from exploitive and oppressive systems. We center the voices of those who are directly impacted by the outcomes of the design process. We prioritize design's impact on the community over the intentions of the designer. We view change as emergent from an accountable, accessible, and collaborative process rather than as a point at the end of a process. And we see the role of the designer as a facilitator rather than an expert. We believe that everyone is an expert based on their own lived experience, and that we all have unique and brilliant contributions to bring to a design process. We share design knowledge and tools with our communities. We work towards sustainable, community-led, and controlled outcomes. We work toward non-exploitative solutions that reconnect us to the earth and to each other. Before seeking new design solutions, we look for what is already working at the community level. We honor and uplift traditional, indigenous, diasporic, and local knowledge and practices.
Thank you so much, Teresa, for taking us through these. I know these are a lot, and there's a lot of context and a lot of depth that these principles address. So as we go through the rest of the slides, there's only so much time that we have that we can do, but I'll try and go through some of the nuances of these principles that can be practically applicable to online learning. I want to now invite you again, another little sticky note exercise. So now that you're a little bit familiar, maybe a cursory understanding of the principles, why do you think we need something like this in e-learning? Or what benefit would you find in having design justice be an approach for your learning design work? So again, please feel free to use a sticky note. Please feel free to unmute and share. You're very welcome to do whatever comes most naturally to you. Also sharing the Jamboard link again. It's nice to see folks continuing to join in. So we're talking for folks who've joined in just now. We just went over what the design justice concept is, looked a little bit at the principles. You can scroll through the early slides of the Jamboard to catch up. And we're now just talking about why something like design justice could be relevant to e-learning design practices. So there's a note from somebody here, so saying that it can be easy to slip into the we know what students and clients need without inviting their inputs. Yes, absolutely. Anyone else? Is there anything else you'd like to share, either through voice or chat or sticky note? One coming in. I think we need it in all practices, especially any related to teaching and learning. And in e-learning design, I believe it is a leadership responsibility for instructional designers. Absolutely. So as you're thinking about this, I also want to share a quote from someone I have the pleasure of knowing and sharing space with in the Design Justice Network Instruction Design Working Group. So Dr. Sarah says she is a design justice practitioner and teaches in higher ed in the US in a university there. And she says that in practice, a design justice approach means that designers make a commitment to working in community with co-designers while attending to power dynamics within the design process. So designing a curriculum from a design justice perspective might include co-designing the syllabus with students, providing a space for students to identify class projects that are impactful for their own lives, and using ungrading to more evenly distribute the power to decide what counts as success among teacher and student. So Dr. Sarah has done a lot of work around this and has a blog that I've linked towards the end of the chat that you can check out and learn more about the different ways that there's a few of us who've been using design justice in our education work and what we practically are able to bring to the learning design process. So now getting into a little bit about where I'm coming from and why I'm here, why I'm talking about this, and the way that I've been able to use the design justice principles in my work. So I work mostly with nonprofits. I do learning design with it's been a couple of contexts. So usually in the nonprofit sector with folks who are working professionals or activists in different spaces, most likely in the violence prevention, gender rights, violence against children space. And I've worked with a couple of nonprofit organizations that create learning experiences for people that are open access, free to use, free to learn, but also made with limited budgets because these are nonprofits that work on limited funding. The courses or learning experiences are designed for the global majority, so in Asia and Africa, and in some cases parts of Latin America as well. And these are situations where there is often connectivity limitations. We might not have data is either very expensive or is patchy, and there are also security concerns, especially if you are an activist in certain settings. You don't always want to be in a public online space talking about your work or making it known to the government or other stakeholders about the work that we're doing. And also because it is sometimes traumatic work, sometimes in humanitarian settings or violent settings, using a trauma-informed approach has been central to my work. I've put in a couple of links up here. I won't go through them in detail, but invite you to look at them as in when you get time. The first one is for a course that I designed, an asynchronous course that was earlier an in-person course that Translators Without Borders had done for just teaching basics of humanitarian interpretation to folks. And this is for people who aren't like career interpreters, but who just are in crisis settings and need just to know the basics of interpretation. So I've done an asynchronous online version of that on Moodle. So that's a link to that course if you'd like to check it out. And I also spent a couple of years with the Prevention Collaborative, which is an organization that works to prevent violence against women and children, and worked on designing their learning lab, which hosts several very interesting free online courses. Some are synchronous, some are asynchronous, and these are designed for violence prevention workers across Africa, South Asia, and parts of Latin America as well. So please do check those out as and when you get time. And there are some approaches that we could take from the design justice lens to make those courses more accessible and equitable for our audiences. So I'll just share a bit about some of the key practices that and learnings that I've imbibed taking design justice into my work in these spaces. It's definitely a work in progress as we function with several limitations, but I will share a bit about the attempts that we've made and how it's gone for us. So the first big learning and the biggest practice that we try and do is to use co-design or participatory design methods. So trying to involve people in the design process itself, starting from whether a certain topic or a subject is an urgent need, to figuring out what that course or learning experience includes in its content. It's very critical to have folks who represent your learners, if not the learners themselves. So at the Prevention Collaborative, for example, our learning design team had folks who came from a violence prevention practice, had on-ground experience of activism and the kinds of lives that our learners lead. They were also from geographical locations that our learners are usually from. So, for example, I'm from South Asia, I had colleagues from Nepal, from Thailand, from Rwanda, from Malawi, from other places. So they understand what the realities are of these spaces and learning in these spaces. It's of course impossible to have every learner represented or every identity represented when you're trying to co-design, especially when you're on a timeline and a budget dictated by a third party. In my case, it was funding institutions. In your case, it might be academic institutions or the companies that you work with. But we try and do whatever we can to center the voices of our learners, and we've been trying to do that. The second big part is accessibility. So talking about not just disability justice, but also data, time, and language justice. And it's not something that can be an afterthought. So e-learning is already something that's more accessible to people than in-person learning, simply because if you have some disabilities, you're not able to attend in person, whether it's intellectual disabilities or physical. Sometimes e-learning already provides you with more access. But beyond that, I think we have to be intentional about what we're trying to do and how we're trying to bring more people into the fold of our learning experiences and making it welcoming for them to be there. So I want to say here, like, simply having alt text is not enough. I see sometimes, like, I've had people tell me just put alt text and that's it. That's not it. Like, that is not very, very far from what we need to be doing. So in our courses, for example, we've tried to keep language very simple and keeping the courses simple to navigate with clear instructions, using LMSs that are accessibility friendly and easy to navigate, making sure we provide interpretations, transcripts, etc. We also try and offer translations whenever it's possible and using simple English so that people who have English as a second language or use a digital translator can still get the important things from the learning experience. So in synchronous learning, also having interpreters is key. So on language justice, for example, I was just talking to somebody yesterday about what that really means. And English is a second language for me. If I were to do this in my first language, which is Punjabi or Hindi, then I would be maybe able to say things very differently or more comfortably than I can in English. But if we were to turn that around, that always that has this impact of centering people who may not speak English or don't feel the need. They may not feel the need to learn English to be a part of spaces like these. So that burden to make that happen, I think, is on, like someone rightly said in one of the early slides, that it is on the instruction designers and the learning designers and those who hold power to try and make that accessible for folks. The other thing here, I think I specifically also mentioned data is, like I said, data, time. Not everyone has access to good data connections and to things that allow, video to be there, or they may keep falling in and out. So recordings have been very helpful. We make sure we record our sessions or have transcripts available for folks who would rather read than and find that to be more accessible. So things like that are some simple ways that even within limited budgets, one can be mindful of accessibility and language justice and time justice. I think I was sharing it's about 11 in the night for me. But if you want to try and bring more people in from different settings and different spaces, having things at a time that works for them, and will also be a simple but very needed way of bringing people in and trying to make sure they feel included and welcome. Again, not possible for everybody. You can't have courses in every time zone, of course, but figuring out who is your main audience and who do you want to benefit from your work and who do you want to include in your work, that is a question that IDs or learning designers have to answer. I know I'm running a bit behind time, so for the rest, I'll just do a quick summary of, we've had some discussions about power already, and already IDs are in a position of power. And in my context, more so because we offer free courses. So in nonprofit settings, there's already a bit of pedestalization that happens, that you haven't had that transaction of money in exchange for learning. So we work more consciously to de-pedestalize ourselves and try and make sure that people who are part of this space have their voices heard and they're able to be decide what is learned, how it's learned, and have enough spaces for feedback and participation, and are shown that their feedback is taken seriously and heard. Similarly, again, with assessments and engagement metrics, with adult learners, you can't have, it wouldn't make sense to have, like there's no degree at the end of it. So we do have certifications, but these are not academic certifications. So thinking about why people are coming, maybe I already know something and I skip to the 5th lesson and take what I need and take it back to my field work or my work. I have very little time and space to be learning. So when I do come, I want something that is to the point and the freedom to be able to pick and choose. So that may not always suit assessment spaces or standard assessment criteria or engagement criteria, but we mold it in accordance with who we're catering to and who's the key learner in that space. And contextualizing. So your content, if I'm working with folks from Africa, I can't be giving examples from India. I can't be giving examples from America. I have to figure out, and again, coming back to co-design. So if I have people on the learning design team who do represent those spaces and those interests, they will be key to making sure things are contextual and relevant for the people who are there, and therefore helping them continue their journey and feel welcome throughout. So yeah, just some questions to consider in going a little bit deeper than the questions that were there in one of the early slides, the 3 questions. And I also want to highlight the Design Justice Pedagogy project here. They've done some incredible work, and you can see some of the links to their work at the end of the slides. I won't go through these. I do want to give folks maybe now 5 minutes for a quick breakout session to be able to chat with each other and digest this a little bit and see what stays with you. I'll now request Kara, if you can maybe put us in groups of 2 each, a quick pair exercise. And I invite you to just introduce yourself quickly, share a bit about what you do, and the design context with your group mates. And then take a couple of minutes, head back to the principles slide, see which principle resonates with you the most. And if you feel like there's a way that you can maybe link it to your work or modify some aspect of your learning design work through any of these principles that resonate with you. So what would that look like? How is that different from what your current process is? And then just sharing that with each other. So we'll take exactly 5 minutes and call everybody back with about 5 minutes left so we can close. But I see folks dropping off. I know group work is often the point where that happens. But whoever's still here, you're very welcome to stay with us and just do that quick pair work exercise. So, Kara, do we feel ready with the groups?
Yep, I'll go ahead and start it now.
Thank you so much. Sorry, is everyone able to access their groups? Do you see a pop-up or something coming up?
Yep, I'm just moving for ones that are only in
Okay.
by themselves.
Yeah, I was just bounced out. So what are you going to do?
Oh, I'm sorry. It looked like there was only you in there.
And maybe I
So-
was the only person in there. Yeah.
So I moved you to another one.
Okay.
Maybe we can move you back, Kate.
Yeah. If you can move me back into another one,
Yeah.
that would be great.
Yep, you
Yes.
just need to join. Says you're not joined.
Yeah, I was the only one in my room also.
Okay, so I can move you.
Maybe we can put Kay and Angelica in the same one.
Well, I got Kay, well, I can move her to,
Yeah, move
four,
me. Okay, I'm leaving. Bye.
and then let me get
Bye.
Angelica to 4.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mm.
Is
So
adult learning.
adult learning lab, are you here?
Sure.
Be here.
They're supposed to be. Oh.
They might not be right now. Thank you so much, Kara, for the groups. We're a bit later than I thought we would be, but
No
that's
problem.
always the case.
I'll see if adult learning lab wants to try another one because everybody dropped out of room 1. So we got. That's not one. Okay. So we got 3. I messed up. I got 4 people in room 3 when I was moving them. So that
I
was
think that's okay now. If you move them now, you don't have that in the middle of a chat, so that's all
yeah.
good.
No, I'll just leave. Yeah.
We'll figure that out.
Two people waiting room.
Hi, David, Angela. Were you with us earlier? We're just in some
I
breakout groups.
I managed to not have my camera on, and I was adjusting adjusting my camera and dropped out of my breakout room. So
Oh, okay.
that's okay.
I
Do
think
you want me to put them in other ones?
maybe a new one for Angela and David, if that's okay.
Sure.
Just take a minute.
Let's see, assign to one. And assign to one. Okay.
See you in a bit, David.
But then Angela dropped out once I assigned her to a room. So I'm gonna move David.
To room 2, maybe.
Yep.
Or room 4.
Let me move to 2.
Sending folks a message so we end on time. I just want to check, do we have a 60-second closing timer on the groups, or when we close them, people just come back?
Sorry, I was muted. We do. Shall I go ahead and hit it? Close
Yes,
all?
please.
Okay,
Yes.
sorry.
Thank you. But a minute to go. Welcome back, everyone. Apologies, I know that was shorter than we'd initially planned, but I hope you got some chance to learn a bit about each other and talk about what design justice might look like for your context. Some nods, so good to see that. We're at time, so I was hoping we'd have some time for an open group discussion, But I do want to invite you to use the Discord server that ELCC has set up so beautifully, and we can keep in conversation there. So if you have any questions, please do put it in there, and I'll be in that chat if there's anything that we can chat about. Also invite you to see the last page of the Jamboard. There's a whole list of resources there that you can check out, which have, we could only get into so much today. I was trying to pack a lot in, but when you have time and leisure, please do have a look at those and see what maybe something might be helpful for your context. And a huge thank you to everybody for joining, and to Kay and to Kara for making this happen. Very, very excited that I could be here and be part of this with you all. So thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
I'm gonna,
Bye.
Thank
Have
you,
a good rest
Rubina.
of the conference. Thank you.
I'm gonna, oh, everybody's, I gotta put the chat survey in.
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay.
I totally forgot.
No problem, but now I.
Oh, I can ask Deanna to make an announcement to make sure that we're all filling out that survey for the sessions we attend as well in Discord. And I'm
Okay,
sure
cool.
Kay will send that out and have a link for everyone to do that at the end of the day. So I think we're okay.
Okay, well, great. Thank you, Brandon.
Glad that worked out. Thanks so much, Kara. I'm gonna head off now as well.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much for your support.
Have a good
Bye.
day.
Thank you.